If I believe there's a reason for this pain I'm going through, if I believe that leaving me was all that you could do, if I believe that I can feel you by my side, I'll make it through the night. If I believe that time will teach me how to find my way, if I believe that broken hearts grow stronger every day, if I believe that now you're dancing across the sky, I just might get by. If I believe that memories won't always hurt this much, if I believe that I will see your face again, I can wait till then. If I believe I'll hold you in my arms again, I can wait. I know that I can wait. I can wait till then. I can wait till then.
Good evening, everyone, and welcome to the Somerville Overcoming Addiction show. Tonight, we have a special guest, and it's Kate Genovese, right? And she wrote a book called Hat Tricks from Heaven. That's a beautiful tribute to your son.
Yeah.
You know, and why don't we start off with what happened? You know, when did you find out that you had your son had addiction problems?
Well, he always played hockey, and he was good at it, you know, real good at it. So he got a scholarship to a private high school, and he wanted to stay at Woburn High. You know, he said, I want to stay with my friends from there, but he wanted to really try to go to Division I. And so it was recommended by some other coaches from other teams to go private, and then he could get into, you know, a Division I college because he was smart too. So he said, I'll give it a chance for a year. If I don't like it, I'll leave. So we agreed, great. So he went and he loved it, and he lived on campus, so he wasn't at home. And the first year in hockey, he tore his cartilage.
Oh.
And so that was a quick recovery, though, because they just did an arthroscopy. Nevertheless, they gave him some pain meds. And there wasn't an issue there. But the following, he was there 5 years. He did a 5-year stint at Governor Dummer, because usually when you come from private school, you go 5 years. So 2 of those years, he had 2 more injuries. And one was his shoulder that was really, really, really painful. And he was out for the rest of the season. Like, he played half the season, then he missed. So when he was going back to school and he had the surgery, he said, can I, now he was a month out of the surgery. He said, can I go to the doctor and get some more pain meds? And I said, Gino, no. I think you should go to I think you should go on to ibuprofen. You've been on it too long. But he was insistent. You know, addicts, they are so manipulative. And I gave in. I said, I'll let the doctor decide. But I'm a nurse. I got there. I know the doctor. And I said, you know, I'm not happy with this. Can he go on ibuprofen? I said, addiction runs in my family. At the time, I had a nephew that was using heroin, and I was scared. And the doctor just yelled at me. He said, do you know how painful this surgery is? And he wants to get back on the ice. He needs the OxyContin. So I was so intimidated by that time I gave in. I wish I was tougher. There's one thing, I wish I was tougher. And, excuse me, and said no, but I wasn't. And so what I did do, though, is I took the prescription, and he was so mad at me. I took the prescription, cashed it, brought it back to the school nurse at the school. And I could tell right there and then, he was a junior in high school, the look in his eyes, I said, you know, this kid got a problem. I'm going to have to watch him. And so he went on to college, and he had 2 more injuries on his knees. He had an ACL repair, and he had to be on the medication again. We kept saying, quit hockey, will you? I mean, just quit. And he wouldn't. He said, I have to. It just takes out all the anger that I'm having. And while he was in high school, the anger came from, we found out that he was sexually abused by his uncle, and he had never told us. But at school, he had written a paper, and it was very disturbing to the teacher, because he said he went to visit, it was supposed to be made up, but I knew it was true. He went to visit this man in the hospital that abused him, and he shot him. He shot him 3 times, one for his brother, one for his sister, one for him. And so that's when it came out. That's when it came out. So we got him help. He seemed to be doing well. He went to counseling. Then he goes to college. He didn't make it to a Division I. You know, it was too bad, because one of the Division I colleges came to look at him at a game, and his shoulder popped out.
Oh my goodness.
And he's on the ice like this, and he's trying to shove it in and you know, get it back in, but it just wouldn't go in. And so they were very nice. They came up to him and said, Gino, why don't you do a year of junior hockey? Mm-hmm. And he said, no. We said, no, we're sick of this. He's going to just move on. So he did. So after high school, he seemed to have it together. He had a really good girlfriend, Heather, lots of friends, lots of support. Most of the kids seemed straight. Maybe they smoked pot a little bit, but, you know, it was nothing that I thought it would be, nothing. And so he and Heather were pretty close, and they were looking for an apartment, and they couldn't find one that they could afford together in the nice part of Worcester, because she's from that area. Actually, I think they were looking in Shrewsbury. So she said, I'm going to go back and live with my mother and save money. Why don't you go live with Phil? And Phil lived at the top of a bar. And so he had been sober for 6 years, as far as I know. And that was his downfall. It was the worst part of Worcester. And they'd ask him to bartend sometimes. And he got into drugs again there. And how we found out he was addicted is one of his roommates he had at Assumption called us. And he said, Mrs. Genovese, I just got to tell you, Gino has a problem. I do too. I'm taking myself to a rehab in California, to a detox. He said, but he owes me $2,000 and I need it. And I wasn't sure if I believed him. You know, like, is this a scam? I don't even know this kid's name. I've never heard of his name before. So my husband's pretty street smart, and, you know, he got on the phone with them, and they discussed it, and he said, okay, I'll call my son. So he called Gino, and he said, I'm going to come up and see you. And he said, all right. So there he was in the bar, crying his eyes out, you know, drinking a beer, crying his eyes out, and spilled his guts, told them the story. He was addicted to oxycodone. And we said, okay, you're getting out of here. You're coming home with us. And that's all there is to it. Now, he had a good job. He had a car, and a company car, and he was doing really well. So we thought. But now I didn't pick up on some signs. Like, he was making a lot of money, yet he called me one day and he didn't have rent money. And I said, rent money? I said, you're making more money than I am. And he said, please, Ma, I screwed up. I didn't manage my money correctly. And so I met him, but I wrote the check out to the landlord. And he was very upset that I did that. Why didn't I write it out to him? So right then and there, I said, something's still going on. I said, you're still getting high, aren't you? No, I'm fine. Stop looking into it. And he was still in denial about it. He said he was better. Then he got in a car accident with a company car.
Oh.
And the Worcester police found some evidence of drug paraphernalia. So he was arrested. And he was on probation from Worcester. They gave him another chance. The company was wonderful. They gave him another chance, another car, because he was making a lot of money for them. You know, he traveled all the way up to New York, to Albany, in a huge area. He worked for a lumber company. And happened again, another accident. They had to let him go. And so they let him go, and he came back home. And one thing about Gino, he always wanted to work, no matter what. He wasn't lazy. He found jobs. He found odd jobs. He worked at Market Basket at night, cleaning the floors. But he had asthma, and the smell of the stuff coming out of those machines made him really sick. So he couldn't work there. So he pumped gas, he did a variety of things, but he was still getting high. We had rules. You had to go to meetings. We encouraged him to go to a detox.
Right.
But being 30, it's very, very hard.
No, you can't force him.
I couldn't force him. And we had to call the police a couple of times because he just was out of control. And so we just said, leave the house for the night, just leave. And so he'd go, but he'd come back. And this went on for a year. And so he violated probation a few times. And I was very upset because the Woburn police didn't do anything but ask him, and also the
court system.
The court system, because he was on probation in 2 different places. Westford, I think it was Westford, and Woburn. And so they'd just say, give us $300 and off you go. And finally I said, to the Woburn people, I said, he's really sick. He needs to go somewhere. And why don't you guys encourage that instead of just asking for $300? I don't get it. And so she said, well, you can section him. Mm-hmm. And so we were going to section him, but every time we mentioned sectioning him, he'd be fine. Well, suddenly he'd be normal, and he'd go, I don't know what you're talking about. I'm doing fine.
In recovery?
Yeah. So he'd go to some meetings and this and that, but you know, it's just he didn't get into it. Matter of fact, he said it made him feel worse going to NA meetings. And I went to a couple with him, and afterwards he'd say, see those guys standing out there? They're waiting there to sell drugs to people.
Really?
And it was true, because a lot of the kids were mandated, because
By
they were
the
in the
courts,
courts to go to meetings and get the signature that they went. But they didn't want to stay. They didn't want to stay straight. Neither did my son. He tried. He'd go for a couple of weeks. He'd stay with friends, and then he got in a bed. I went to Oregon to my sister because she had cancer, and I went out there to help her. This was February of 2016. So while I was there, he was working for an insurance company. And so he was doing really well, making good money, and got his check and went right to Worcester to get drugs. And he got in an accident with a car. No, he didn't get in an accident. He was driving down the wrong side of the road, and somebody called, so the police came and arrested him. And finally, they put him in jail. But it was actually the worst thing they could have done, because he met so many people in there that were drug addicts, and he was put in. We tried to get him in a rehab in California. I'm sorry, Florida. We had it all set up. The lawyer, we had to get him a lawyer, and the judge said, no, he's not going to leave the state. He has to stay here. Oh, I was so upset. I mean, like, just get him out of the environment.
So what court system was that?
That was, I think it was Westboro.
Okay.
So,
yeah, Westboro. That's Worcester, Westboro.
Yeah. So we personally didn't know what to do, because I didn't want him in jail, because I had gone and visited him, and you could just see that he was not doing well, and he was detoxing from Suboxone. And we decided, you know, let's get you out of here and get a lawyer. We didn't want him to stay in jail. The probation officer was no help. She was mean, she was rude, she was unkind. On the other hand, Chris was an addict. Gino was an addict. And they were mad at him because he kept violating probation. So they finally put him in jail. So after that, they said, all right, you can go in house arrest. Well, that was the worst thing possible.
Really?
Yeah, I thought it would be good. But they made him go to Lowell every day to the sheriff's department to give a urine and go to classes. So he had to get a ride there. He couldn't take the bus. Finally, he had a counselor that said, come on, Gino, snap it up, get better, and I'll let you take the train here, because I was working and I had to take time out to go to drive him up there. So
it must be very hard because you're a nurse. Just to take the time off.
I know.
Did you work in a hospital, or?
I was doing VNA.
Okay.
So I could pretend I was seeing a patient.
Right. Yeah, I know.
I know.
We have to do what we got to do, right?
know.
You want your son to get help,
Yeah,
so you're going to do whatever you can to get him that help.
yeah. So I drive him up there, and after he was there 2 weeks, he came home one night, and I could tell he was high. But they check your urine every day. So I said, what are you high on? And he said, I am not high. And he was high, but I didn't know what he was high on. So it got me so angry, I called there and I said, look, I know Gino's getting high on something, and I know you're testing his urine. What do you actually test for? and they named everything but fentanyl and methadone. And the guy said to me, "We don't test for methadone because you can't get high on methadone." And I said, "Well, that is not true. You can get very high on methadone. I know that for a fact." And I said, "And fentanyl, that is out in the street now, and that is killing people." And he said, "It's too expensive of a test." So I said to myself, that's what he's getting high on. He's doing that. Must be. So it went on like that for a little while, and then he started. I was in Oregon when all that happened, so I had to leave and come home. So it kind of went on like that for a while, and then he seemed to get better. He went to his old job, one of his customers he had, and they hired him to, like work, lifting the lumber in the trucks and all that. But he still had to give urines, because he's on house arrest. So he still had to give urines. He said, "Look, can I just go to Woburn instead of Lowell?" And they said, "No, you have to go to Lowell." I mean, they were mean. They weren't. It was like they didn't want him to get better, because the company said, "Chris, you're going from 2 hours." Because he would take the bus up there and wait and give a urine and bus back, and that's 2 hours out of his workday. Finally, they said, "When you are off of probation, when you're off of house arrest, you can come back here and work." And so he was so discouraged. Oh, the look on his face, he just, he was just so discouraged. And he was staying sober during that time. So he went to get off house arrest, and, they decided he wasn't ready. He still needed to be on house arrest. So he got a job working 2 to 10, just answering phones. And he was going to start that Tuesday after Memorial Day. So he said, "Okay, I'm buying some rollerblades, and I'm going to just take myself down there because I'm sick of you and Dad having to drive me." And there was no bus down there. So he said, "Fine, that's great." So I decided to go away for the weekend with my family of origin. My brother has a place in New Hampshire, so me and a couple other people went, and the last thing I saw was Chris in front of the house. My sister came over to my house to drive, and he looked so cute. We have a dog, Frankie, and so he sat there.
Can you believe that? A dog, Frankie. That's my son.
No,
Frankie.
That's right. Oh, so it was so sad. Yeah, so he was on the grass, and he took Frankie's paw and waved. And I said, I should take a picture of that, but I didn't feel like getting out of the car. And that's the last time I saw him. I got a call at 2:30 in the morning. He was allowed to go out and stay out till 10, and he told me he had a date that night. And now we were in charge of his money, so I told my husband, give him a little, don't give him a lot, in case he does go bowling. You had to trust a little bit. And he used it for heroin and fentanyl. But what he did was my husband was out, that was a Friday night, and he saw Gino walking up the street and picked him up, and they watched sports for 2 hours together. And Gary said he was straight. They had a good time. And he said, all right, I'm going to bed. Shut the lights out, Gino. So my husband woke up about 1:30, and he saw all the lights still on, so went downstairs and found him on the floor.
Oh, my God.
So he must have used the minute my husband went upstairs. But the police tracked, because he had his cell phone, they tracked what he did. And they found the kids that...
Really?
Yeah. Yeah.
So what happened with that?
Well, they couldn't prove it, but they knew it was actually at AA meeting.
Really?
Yeah.
Is where he got the drugs?
They think either at a sober house, which is in Woburn down the street, because he was there first, and he may have gotten it there, and then went up to an AA meeting up at the rehab, and it was one of the places he got it.
Right. Isn't that amazing? That the places that you're supposed to be getting well in or getting help was actually where the drugs came from.
So my husband hadn't given him a whole lot of money, but you don't need a whole lot of money. Evidently, fentanyl's not that expensive.
No. But didn't someone say to you that it was expensive?
Yeah, the people at to do the test.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, to
Yeah.
do the test.
Yeah.
And the reason the people that sell the drugs put fentanyl in it is it's short acting, because they give it in hospitals, and so they give it like during anesthesia and all that, but they have to keep giving it because it wears off. So that's why they put it in there. It wears off, but the high is so wonderful that they just keep using. And he overdosed.
Did he tell you that?
No, I know it.
Because I know that Frankie had talked about it one time about the heroin and how, Jimi Hendrix had purple haze.
Yeah.
So that song, if you listen to the words, it describes heroin.
Oh, heroin's horrible in itself, but the fentanyl is what's killing them.
Right.
And now they're putting fentanyl in cocaine and fentanyl in pot. So you don't know what you're buying.
That's right.
Out on the street. It's scary. So my daughter...
And now that it's legal.
I know.
And I really hate that bill. I mean, when they first came out, I'm like 6 pot plants in every apartment, but only 12 in a whole house, right? So if you have 12 pot plants in each house, when you go outside, what's your fresh air going to be? Smells like weed to me. It's like you're never going to smell fresh air anymore.
But it is beneficial for some people.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah, like my brother has restless leg syndrome, and the doctor said if it helps, smoke it.
Right.
And it does. It helps him.
It's actually someone's recovery, and that's how I feel about it. I actually had the Green Nurses on the show, and they talked about the medical marijuana and how many different strains there are, and you don't even think that way, that there are different there's different pot for different issues, or it's not even smoking, it could be just oils.
Yeah.
Right. So and how to maintain using cannabis oil and stuff like that for your medical reasons.
Yeah.
So, I mean, I totally believe it. I know that from my own experience, I've seen people that have used it and it's best for them. And it's the least of all the evils, I thought. Suboxone, methadone, we have so much abuse with a lot of these different drugs, even gabapentin and, all these different drugs that are out there to help you, but they're not helping you.
I take gabapentin because I have neuropathy. I have rheumatoid arthritis. And I mean, it helps that, but I don't get high from it.
No. Well, you're using it properly.
Yeah, and then I'm thinking they probably take it out of the capsule and snort it.
It's possible.
I'm sure it's possible. I'm sure that's what they do.
Sure. I'm sure that you said that you're a nurse, so you said the VA. So
visiting nurse.
Yeah, but the thing is that you must see a lot of patients that have issues with medication.
Oh, yeah. Lots of them.
So I actually was talking to our director of health, public health, who is Doug Crest, and he talked about how there's a lot of elderly that are addicted, and people don't even know it. And I'm sure that you've seen it. If you're going in to visit these patients, there are patients that live by themselves, and some of them do have problems with dementia, and what happens? They're probably overdoing their medication. And I know there's been some elderly people that have probably overdosed, but they don't talk about that often.
Yeah,
It's not just children, it's elderly too.
Thought. Yeah, because I remember going into one lady's house and she had chronic pain. You know what's chronic pain? Constant pain. So the doctor put her on.
Isn't that what you have? You have constant pain.
Yeah, I do. Yeah, I've had 4 surgeries, like knee replacements and my back, and I have to have one more knee done, and then I'm done. I hope.
Look at that big smile.
I hope I'm done. And I realized, I mean, I really liked the feeling. Like I could see how you could get addicted. Seriously.
Well, that happened to me. I had rotator cuff surgery on this on the shoulder, and it was OxyContin.
Yeah.
Not OxyContin, but oxycodone.
Oxycodone.
Yeah, codeine. I say oxycodone, by the way. Anyway, and I went to visit my doctor, and then I mentioned that I was out of the script, and we were going to the 2nd month, and he says, you know, that's addictive. And I said, well, I guess I'm not going to have that anymore, because I was afraid. I didn't want to have addiction. And the thing is that that's not when I realized either one of my children were addicted to OxyContin. So I liked it. I started with a 1/4 of a pill, and then before you know it, I had the whole pill, because it was helping me when I went to physical therapy. They'd say, do not take pain pills while you're doing physical therapy. Of course, I didn't listen to them, and I did it because I wanted actually to be able to use my arm. And I couldn't, you know, it's like learning how to move your arm all over again, and the pain that was involved. And now I could do anything after a while, you know? It's like I didn't even have the surgery. So I did it for that main reason, because when you were in the physical therapy, it was so painful. It was worse than the surgery to try to you know, to be able to move your arm. So at that point, I knew that it was addictive, and I decided no more.
Yeah, well, smart.
Yeah.
I actually did that. I had foot surgery this summer, and while I was in the hospital, you know, they were giving it to me every 3 or 4 hours, and I was thinking about it, and I said, you know, I really do like this stuff, and I don't want to get addicted. So I gave the bottle to my husband, and I said, just give it to me when I ask. Because before I was using it to help me sleep too, because it helps you sleep. But I did not want to go through like withdrawal, because that's awful. That really is. That's a tough thing. I had a patient who had he had a knee replacement, and he was in a lot of pain. And one day he said to me, you know, I'm cutting down on they give him Percocet, which really is oxycodone. He said, and I'm trying to cut down, but every time I do, I start to sweat and this and that. And I said, well, you're getting addicted, because once he takes it, he's fine. So I had to do and he was like me. He didn't want to be addicted, so I gave him a schedule of cutting down, you know, whole pill for 2 days, half pill for 2 days, 1/4 pill for 4 days, and then maybe 1/4 of a pill, and you should be fine, you know, because your body gets used to it not being in your system. Yeah. And another thing the kids are getting addicted to is benzos. Xanax and all those. Yeah.
That's sad.
It really is sad. It is.
When we think about it, you know, when did it all start? When they said, what is your pain level from 1 to 10? When did that start? Back in in the 90s?
I worked at Leahy for 20 years. That happened as like my last year I was there. So that was I worked there from 1980 to 2000. So yeah, the pain was the 5th vital sign. That's what they called it. So pain was very important. You're always asked, are you in pain? You know.
So,
You
are
could
you
be
in pain? Well, it would be a 2, but you'd say it was a 10.
Yeah.
So you could get more pills,
Yeah,
you know?
yeah. But
Totally
with
amazing.
rheumatoid arthritis, they don't give narcotics. They give you cortisone shots. And, you know, one time,
How often do you have that?
I don't have them anymore because I've had my knee replaced, and so it doesn't work for me anymore because I've had it so much.
Yeah.
Well, that's not good for you. It wears down your
Yeah.
cartilage and your bones. So, yeah. That's a good question. When did the pain things happen?
Yeah. And I thought maybe that was around the time that a lot of these, you know, OxyContin came out.
Well, OxyContin came out, and that went wild because people with back pain were getting so much relief. It was like they could get up and walk. And these were people that really, truly had pain. And it was like a miracle for them.
But wasn't originally made for people that were dying of cancer?
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah,
terminally
that
ill
too.
people, so that,
Terminally ill.
you know, just to, you know, to make them feel, you know, the last,
Comfortable.
yeah, keep them comfortable in their last few months of life, or
Exactly.
as long as it was going to, you know, it could be longer than a few months,
Yeah. But then they discovered it helped back pain so much. And there's so many people with back pain. I think the pain clinics are pretty good if you get a correct one.
Well, they were loaded down in Florida. One on each corner, on every corner. Did you know they limited to the doctors to 150 a day? Right.
Oh, really?
Yeah. 150 a day. That is like remarkable.
Well, when I last had my foot surgery, I had so much pain in the beginning. I was screaming, crying. I needed something stronger. So I had to go to Leahy and get a shot of morphine. And I felt so bad doing that, but I couldn't stand it. And then 2 days later, that pain was lessened. It's almost like I didn't need the OxyContin. But, you know, every once in a while, because I have a plate in my toe, every once in a while I get this horrible jabbing pain. So I took it, and then it went away, and I had some left. And I said, you know, I really don't need these. I don't. You know, I should give them away, or I should throw them away or something. So, yeah, I stopped using them, and I went on ibuprofen, which worked just fine, really. It was actually better.
So what are they? Well, I always say that too. Like a lot of times, my son had a torn meniscus, and it's never really been repaired. So the Advil is almost like a daily, you know.
Yeah.
Because you don't want that problem that you had years ago. So that's a daily ritual.
Yeah.
Advil.
Well, Gino lived in pain. When he graduated from college, he really needed more shoulder surgery. And he said, surgery or this new job I just got. He said, I'm not playing hockey anymore. Maybe it won't be so bad. I'm just going to take the job and not have surgery. But he lived in pain. He did, I mean, that's one thing I got to say. He did live in pain. He'd just like stretch and go, and his shoulders would pop out.
That's horrible.
It is horrible. I mean, I learned how to shove it back in for him. But he still, and then it didn't happen all the time, so he didn't want to have the surgery.
Yeah.
Again, he was so sick of surgeries and you know, being laid up and all that. So I get it. I get that he was in pain. But, you know, it was just a shame that there's so much fentanyl out there and heroin, and I think
Actually, you know, not too long ago, I had gone to an opening, a premiere of a documentary called American Epidemic. I went down to Foxborough with Matt Gannum, and it was totally amazing that, you know, even my son, there's one little part in there that I had said in the movie was my son was afraid to tell them at work that he had addiction. So, because he didn't want to lose his job, but instead he lost his life. You know, and then another thing is that he would never put a needle to his arm. You know, he used to scream and holler as a child, and yet, in the end, he put a needle to his arm. So, I mean, they have their own, like I always mention this, that they all have their own stigma, and they're all embarrassed to where they got. No one ever said that I want to be a junkie, or no one ever said that I want to have a drug problem. You know, and you talk about morphine, and that you've had the morphine. I was in the labor room. Frankie was due Labor Day weekend. I ended up in the hospital in July 10th, or maybe July 6th or 7th. I had just came back from visiting family in New York, and I was in the labor room for 1 week. Imagine hearing all these women. I was in the labor room, right? Because he actually was born on July 16th. So I was on ice chips for a week.
Why didn't they just do a section?
Well, because they said he wasn't developed enough. They did the immunocentesis.
Oh, yeah.
They sent it to 3 different hospitals. One hospital said that he was developed enough. It was his lungs that they were worried about. And then the other 2 said that he was fine. But they weren't as the top hospital. The top hospital said that he was developed, and the other 2, I can't remember the situation. But anyway, Frankie was born because my water broke. And they knew that they had to eventually deliver him. And so he was born July 16th.
How much did he weigh?
4 pounds, 9 ounces.
And his lungs okay?
Yeah, his lungs were fine. But he was 7 weeks early.
Oh, wow.
But they gave me morphine. And I was mortified when they did that. I'm saying, why are they giving me morphine? Because I was in a lot of pain, you know, from laying down in that bed for a week.
And so the baby was getting morphine, too.
Right. So Frankie ended up having morphine. So
I worked a short time at St. Elizabeth's, and they have a high rate of addiction with girls coming in. And they're coming in because the baby, they're on methadone, and the baby is taking so much of that methadone, and they're kind of going through withdrawal because the baby's getting the methadone.
right.
So what do? They don't want it, they can't get off it, and so they just give them more. And it was just so sad to see. Oh,
You know,
my
a lot of
God.
babies are born addicted, and then have to go through a withdrawal.
Yeah.
You know, and that brings us to another point. 37,000 grandparents are raising their grandchildren in this state. That's a lot of grandchildren.
Mm-hmm.
And a lot of them have lost their parents to addiction. So they're not going to be able, when they get old enough and have their own children, their children will never know what it's like to have a grandparent because they're gone. It's really sad.
It is sad. It's very sad. It's a sad world. And and it's a big, big business. You know, selling drugs is a huge business. Like those guys in the cellar making,
Yeah.
the fentanyl and, it's just, and it's not all, it's foreigners that are coming in and doing it, but there's also, the Americans along with them. I don't want to be prejudiced here, but it's not
Just a
true.
huge, huge problem in this country.
Yeah.
It's not, I say that it's not an epidemic anymore, it's a pandemic. You know, it's totally is amazing. And they keep making drugs stronger. What really floored me was the other day that the FDA is talking about taking menthol cigarettes off the market, right? But yet,
Yeah, that.
officially okayed a drug that's stronger than fentanyl. I don't get it. I really don't get it.
Yeah.
I don't know what to say. But anyway, let's get back to the book. Hat Tricks from Heaven. So this is the story of his life?
It's a story of his life. It's sad, but there's some funny parts, and it tells about his life.
Right.
Like he saw his older brother.
There's pictures of his girlfriend, Heather.
Yeah.
And his dad, and that's his dad right there, right?
That's me.
Right.
That was when he was graduating from Assumption.
Beautiful family pictures. We have to show.
He was just a happy, happy person. He was always happy.
Is that?
That's football. That's his number.
So he played football too?
Yeah.
Yeah.
He played golf the best. I wish he had stuck with golf. But he loved his teachers. He loved
Beautiful.
He had a great relationship with his teachers at Governor Dummer. Wonderful. They were wonderful. And nobody picked up on there could be an addiction here. But neither did I until I took him to the doctors. And when I said that to the doctor, he said to me, "Stop being a helicopter parent." And he didn't even hear me when I said, "Hello, addiction runs in my family. I have a nephew that's on heroin now. I have a dad that's an alcoholic. Most of my aunts and uncles are alcoholics, or were. They're all dead now. But they were. And my cousins, I always worry about myself.
Could you describe what is a helicopter mother? I don't know. I'm trying to figure that out.
Like a helicopter that just,
hovers over them?
Hovers over them.
Oh, okay, hovering.
And I wasn't a hoverer.
I was.
I was aware. I wanted to be aware of all my kids. And I don't know if that was the right thing to do. My daughter needed no guidance at all. She was pretty good. We did find out that my brother abused her too, and my other son.
I can't believe that.
When I went back to nursing school, my mom watched them, and my brother lived there. So they were little, and so we didn't find out until my daughter was in high school, and she came out with it, and so did my niece. So we had to do something about it. And so I approached my brother and I said, "Is it true?" And he said, "Yes, it's true." He admitted it. And so my daughter was in some counseling at the time, and she told the counselor, and he said, I'm a mandated reporter. I got to tell the police. So he went to the Woburn, he got arrested. He went to the Woburn police and told them that he had abused over 100 people.
Oh my God.
Yeah. And we didn't even know it.
That 900 people didn't show up. They didn't say anything about it.
Nobody said anything, but except my family. So he was out in the street. He was, you know, he had his problems, but he shouldn't have been out in the street. So as a family, we got him to see a doctor that, you know, dealt with pedophiles. So he put him on medication that would keep him from not having it, not going out there. And he went off it all the time, and I couldn't monitor him, you know. So finally we said, let's press charges, and he went to jail. So Jessie, my daughter, she was very brave, pressed charges, but it caused a rift in my family of origin. You know, some of them said, oh, he's our brother, you shouldn't put him in jail, what are you doing, you know? And so
It didn't happen to them, though, right? Didn't happen to their kids.
No.
That's why.
Well, no. They didn't think it did, but it did. We found out later. But regardless, he needed help. You had to put all this aside.
Mm-hmm.
There's kids out there that we don't know that he was abusing. We had, as my family, as the Genovese family, we had to do something about it.
Right.
It was the right thing to do.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
But my mother was 90. It killed her. She had to go visit him in Bridgewater. And, you know, it killed her. She didn't talk to me for a year. But finally she came through when she realized he was sick and all that.
Yeah. Sometimes it's denial, too.
Mm-hmm. And it's her son, you know.
Right, definitely. You love your children.
Yeah, and you don't want to see that, but you had to think of the world. We were thinking of the world. He told the Woburn police clearly 100 people. And I know he wasn't making it up. I think it was a catharsis for him. He could finally say, I did this. And I think he wanted to be punished. I do. And then we found out he was abused by a priest when he was little. And so sometimes people that are abused go on and abuse.
And they abuse, yeah.
Yeah. So, yeah. So Christopher was one of them, but I don't think I don't know the story of it. He just said he was, and he would not talk about it. You know, so
Unbelievable.
So the whole thing is sad, but the book is, you know, it talks about our life. I start out with, I don't want to say too much because I want people to read it.
That's right. Go out and buy the book.
Yeah, and you go to my website too, and it tells more about it, which is KateGenovesBooks.com.
Very good. Very good.
Yeah. Yeah, and that's him in the back. Yeah.
Do I look like an addict? No, definitely not. That's a beautiful, sweet picture of a young boy, you know, and the stigma, which is true. And the funny thing is I just met Kate for the first time at a MORE meeting, Mass Organization for Addiction Recovery, and who was there but the special Troy, what's his last name? I don't even have my card.
Yeah. With MASH?
Yeah, with MASH, which is Mass, what was the second word? Sober houses. Accredited. Mass accredited sober houses. And, you know, I'm really interested in finding out what is reputable sober houses. Like you said, wasn't it a sober house that he could get drugs or NA? And also at these meetings, at the end of the meetings, people are outside waiting to get drugs. Because I know people that did go to the Woburn courts and was told that he had to go to meetings for, what's the name of that group? I forget what the Woburn court system, they have a name for their program. And you have to go to their particular meetings. And then one person didn't want to go to those meetings anymore because she knew that they were leaving there and getting high. And he didn't want to be a part of that. So he ended up getting in trouble instead.
Oh.
So, because he didn't want to go to those meetings. So.
A lot of people don't look at addiction as a disease, but it really is. It really is, and it doesn't affect, it affects every zip code. The rich, the poor.
Absolutely. It does not discriminate.
Yeah, it does not. I mean, I came from a, higher middle class family, and, we all have something,
Absolutely.
So it doesn't matter. It really doesn't matter.
No. And like I read these things like, where were the parents? What are you talking about? A lot of parents are there with their children and have no idea that this is happening until it's done. My son went to Matignon, and I went to them and I said, you know what? Your school is loaded with drugs. And what I was told, and I've said this many a times on the show, I was told, not my school. Just like, not my child. When you're in denial, you're in denial. And there's a lot of people that end up having problems with addiction, and sometimes they end up committing suicide because they don't think they'll ever get clean.
Yeah.
So some of them are dying with overdoses and others are killing themselves. This is horrible. This is a horrible, horrible time to live in, trying to raise the kids. Just do the best that you can. Parents, please, like I always say, have a plan. If you plan, you plan everything in their life, their education, you plan, what doctor they go to. So why not have a plan in case you find out someday that your child is addicted, right? What are you going to do? Find out what's available. The age bracket from 2 to 17, there's, there's different programs. I think High Point has adolescent program now.
The other day at MASH, weren't they saying that it's mandatory that they start teaching about addiction in every school in Massachusetts?
Well, that they are, and it is mandated by the governor for different things, but it's minimal, It really is minimal. We need to do more. We need to educate the parents. We need to educate the kids. We need to have, I believe in hidden in plain sight, so that there's things that are going on in your house that will point to addiction, that there's a problem. Finding pens without the pen, mechanism part of it, then you know that they're snorting.
Yeah.
Rolled up dollars, whatever it is, it's time for us to get educated about what's in our homes and what's going on around our children.
Also, I went to a workshop, and this woman, I can't remember her name, but she was from Springfield or something, and she goes around and gives talks. And she said, parents don't think the kids don't want them to go into their rooms. Their rooms are private. She said, that's bull. Go in, check their things. It's your house.
That's right.
You can go in their room anytime you want. Going into a diary, you can find a lot of things.
Oh, absolutely. I don't think that there should be that privacy when they're that young.
No.
Guess what? Our hour is up.
My goodness.
And we had a wonderful night.
Yeah.
I want to thank you for this interview.
Yeah.
Like I said, we all have to do what we can to help the situation. And if it is from you writing about what happened to your son,
there's a lot of information of things I did wrong, things my husband did wrong, things I did right, and things he did right. There's a lot of information in there, but the most important thing, the money is going towards addiction, the sale of a book.
So Hat Chicks from Heaven. And you can go onto her website, Kate Genovese book.
Books.
Is it .com?
Yep.
Okay. So please look it up. Hopefully it'll be on the bestseller someday.
Thank you.
No problem. So we're still running on YouTube. So, and I'm going to go out and get Stuart.
Okay.
Smile. I told him not to forget us.
Oops, I always do
Here
that.
goes my leash. Remember me?
So this is different. So you filmed from over there?